And the last factor of the three, complacency. And these expeditions, I would say, were really just unlucky. They were progressing well. They had a good plan in place. They'd spent the time and the effort to prepare. They spoke to the right people. They'd gathered all that research information. But what they started to do was come to place. They start to cut corners. So where they had their daily routine worked out, they said, well, actually, we're not going to do that today. We'll do it tomorrow. So all these small little corners slowly start to be cut. When the progress was going well, they would say, we'll take a day off today. And then most of the expeditions, their failure was they would run out of food and fuel before they would reach the South Pole. Okay. So that's final complacency. Can also be.
So do you think that, these three factors, whether it is, say, arrogance or ignorance or complacency, is very common? I mean, do you think that these are the very common reasons to make people failure in many parts or in many, domains of life?
Most certainly. I mean, my experience in the Royal Marine Commandos as a polar explorer in commercial businesses is you can generally put them into one of those three camps as the root cause of failure. And the important thing is when you understand those, is the kind of so what, is you've got to then think, can I put strategies and systems in place to avoid me falling into one of those three camps?
So what can be the mindset which we can develop to overcome these problems, these three factors? So what sort of mindset, what sort of attitude we should be having to overcome this?
I think the first thing, if you recognise that failure can happen, so when failure does happen, or setbacks, I mean, I like to call them setbacks as opposed to failures, is when you do where there is a setback or a challenge, that straight away you're not totally demoralised, that you accept this is part of the learning cycle. And the thing is, you then can take the time out to analyse why that happened, to be quite self-critical, and if need be, bring in other people to help evaluate that process, because sometimes we tend not to be so self-critical, or we can, because we look at the world through our lens. We may not see all the pictures. So if we, on our preparations, we hit a setback, we would try and invite other people, maybe external people, to say, if one trip was a North Pole journey when our communications equipment failed, which is quite crucial if you need an emergency. So when we came back, we got some experts in to understand why did that fail, because we thought we had done everything possible. So that self-critical analysis, when you do reach these setbacks and accept they will happen, and the aim is to learn from them and move forward. What I also do, and I've done it in the Royal Marines as a polar explorer and in commercial, is what is called tent time. So tent time is when I would take time out. So now I do it once a week with my teams. On the journey to the South Pole, we would do it each evening. And tent time is we would have 15 minutes and we would say, let's just have an open discussion of what we did today, what we did this week, what went well, what could we improve on, what didn't go so well. Has anyone got any grievances or anything that's annoyed them this week that they want to share? Because my big thing in the team as well is be open about those grievances so that they don't sit at the back of your mind and start to niggle away. And we'd also then look at what's our plan for tomorrow, what's our plan for next week. And ultimately, it's always asking this question, how can we improve? And in my experience of high performance teams and individuals, is they always take time to take some time out, a bit of self-reflection, but also asking, how can I do better? How can I improve? I'm not going to set that this is my benchmark because I want to achieve higher things, but I'm going to now be self-critical, analyse what I did today, what I did this week, what do I need to work on to move me up to the next level.
Great. So that means self-reflection. I mean, spending time for self-reflection matters a lot, because I understand mostly we did a research in lifology in the eastern part of the world, trying to understand about the intrapersonal, the multiple intelligence in students. So the sample size was pretty good, and it was between 13 to 18 years, and we were trying to understand against each of the multiple intelligence factors how the students are plotted across, and which is more with students and which is less with students. And we could understand in the eastern part of the world, intrapersonal intelligence is extremely less. Intrapersonal intelligence is very synonymous to reflecting ourselves, understanding ourselves, and highly correlating with confidence and self-esteem.
Yeah.
But it is very less it shows. So how we can develop that attitude, you think?
I think the key thing, so it can be quite difficult to do that self-reflection.
Yeah.
Because you're reflecting on, to some degrees, I'm reflecting on my performance based on what I know. And as I said before, you don't know what you don't know. So things like mentoring programs, having connections with individuals who may have already achieved the goal you're seeking to achieve, or someone who you know is very insightful, who you can learn from. So having the ability to reach out to those kinds of individuals, because their level of support to help you have that self-reflection is like to be a lot more profound, a lot more insightful than you trying to do that in your own little circle. Because what you
so
think
you
you
connect
did
with more and more people, right? You have to connect with more people.
Yeah, and the important is also when you're connecting with people is you connect with the right people. Okay. Because it is very easy to be influenced or connect with people who may be quite negative to what your goal is. So you may say, yeah, I really want to achieve this goal in my life or my career, but the person you're connecting with doesn't think that's the course for you. So they may be quite negative, and that can also have a negative impact on you. So it's also about choosing those connections carefully to get those mentors, those influencers, those confidence, the ones who are there to support your passion and not necessarily impart on your passion what their perception is.
Sean, it's like what you were speaking is like, understand the passion, chart the plan, deal with ignorance, arrogance, and complacency. And for that, self-reflection becomes very important. And it is extremely important to get connected with the right people at the right time. So that's what we have spoken till now. And now I would like to ask you, how important is the ability to deal with failure, and how we can deal with failure? Because you were into two professions where the percentage of failure is very high. So how should a person deal with failure, and what can be the right attitude towards failure? We always talk that every failure is a learning. That's fine, a very positive statement. But what should be my attitude to deal with failure? What do you think?
I think it's a good question, and nobody likes to fail or have a setback if they're working towards something they're passionate about. And I think it's understanding that it does happen. So as part of your reaching out and connecting with the individuals who have maybe already followed a similar path that you're embarking on. So lots of reading. So for my expeditions, I will give them a reading list, because when you start to read about other people that have already taken the journey you're embarking on, and then you start to read that, this person, there may be an individual who's your kind of hero, and you read their book and you can relate to when they started their journey, they had lots of self-doubt, they had lots of setbacks. You can then start to realise actually this is part of the process. And it's that ability to overcome those setbacks and learn from those that will ultimately get you to where your goal is and those higher levels of performance.
So it's like, towards failures as setbacks. So we can think that it is common and part and parcel of the life. So that would be the right attitude to tackle them, you believe?
Most certainly, yeah. So I don't like the word failure, I call it setback.
Okay.
Because it's not a failure, it's just a setback, or
it's a setback.
It's a setback, or it's a challenge, or it's a hurdle. But maybe a hurdle's a better word. It's a hurdle that you will encounter.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is you need to understand, how do I now go back that hurdle, but this time I can jump the hurdle and move on to the next one. And there will be hurdles all the way along the journey to the goal. And you just need to accept that they will become, and what I'm going to do is understand now when they happen is I can do some self perspective, look at why did I hit that hurdle at that point, was it expected? And as part of our planning, we would sit around a map of Antarctica and we would role play different setbacks.
Correct.
So we would say we would expect at some point an equipment failure.
Yeah.
So what happens if we lose our tent in Antarctica? The winds get up to 80 miles an hour. So when you stop and you're exhausted and you're putting your tent up, it's very easy to lose your tent in the wind. So then what do you do? How do you then survive? Somebody could get injured. So if a team member's injured and he has to get pulled out, will the expedition continue? So again, we would role play through trying to anticipate some of these hurdles, some of these setbacks we could encounter, and then put in place different strategies to try and avoid them.
Sean, I think we have spoke a lot about success, the critical factors to make a person successful, and the critical barricades over there, or the hinders of that. And we also spoke about getting connected with people and about tackling failures. Pretty fine. But I'm very sure our people would be very interested to listen to an experience from your life, maybe about your toughest expedition you have till today, the toughest one, the worst one, and how you dealt with that scenario by getting empowered from all the factors which we have spoken till now. So can you share that experience with us?
Yeah, so one was, this would have been my South Pole expedition. And on the return journey, I took quite a bad fall and dislocated my shoulder. So 100 miles from the finish point, dislocated shoulder. Luckily on my team, I had recruited a doctor because we realised 3 months in Antarctica it's important to have that medical expertise in the team. We was able to luckily find a doctor who's also keen outdoors and was able to go through the training we put him through. So he put my shoulder back in, so I'd lost at that point 25 kilograms in body weight. So it went back in quite easy. But for me, every hour became quite a challenge because of the pain I was in. And what we did at the start of the expedition, I said to all the team, I said, we all have different things in life that motivates. We spoke about the passion, the goal, but ultimately that core thing that motivates an individual is very different to actually synthesize that and say what it is. We all have different motivators. So what I've said to the team is, write on a card, put it in an envelope, and put that in your sledge of what is motivating you to undertake this journey. And because there'll be times on that journey where you may need to pull that card out as a reminder of what has motivated you to embark on this journey, because all the strategies we spoke about may not be enough, and sometimes you need to really get down to what is at the heart of it. So for me, I had my card, and at those moments is I did then look at that card to remind me that's why I'm here. This is really what is driving my passion. This is what is motivating me to go on. And just to regularly look on that card gave me that extra push for me to keep going for those last 100 miles
something which you can reflect always, correct?
Yeah.
Something which you can look into.
Yeah. So for the students, if you're embarking on a certain course, a certain program, maybe write down on the card that what is it that motivates you, and really spend some time to think about something that gives you a real emotional connection to what it is. It may be something to do with your family, but not just about the monetary gain, because generally in terms of performance, when times get tough, those kind of superficial bits have little impacts. So trying to connect with that emotional level, write it on a card, put that aside, so when you do have these hurdles, these setbacks, and you can look back at the card and say, this is why I'm here, this is why I'm on this journey.
Cool, interesting. And now I just want to ask you that, when you're preparing for all this, so is there a right routine to follow in life? Is there a right pattern to follow in life? Or, it's something like, how should a day look like for a person who really want to get something big in their life? So anything you want to share on that regard?
I don't think there's a specific formula to how you lay out all these different bits we've spoken about, because as I said when I spoke about the team profiling tool, is we are all different. We all see the world slightly differently. So some of us are very extroverted, very introverted. Now I don't mean that in terms of how we speak, it's how we analyse information. So some person, when they're talking about ideas or thoughts, will speak them through. Other people will process them through internally. So they're introverted, extroverted. Some of us are driven by belief, some by logic. Some of us, how we go about our day-to-day business. Some of us are very structured, and some of us are very flexible and on. So if different people, we package this together differently, and the key thing is really having that awareness of how you package all these bits together, so you're able to put your plan in place in a manner that works best for you. Because if you're someone who is not very structured, so someone who's structured will have clear milestones, timeline. Someone who is maybe not that inclined, they will still achieve the end, but for someone whose structure may view their way as being a bit chaotic. But both ways are right. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's not like the best plan, it's always the best fit plan, correct?
Correct.
And it should be very organically designed for people to people than creating a mechanical plan which we believe can be fit for all the people. So it's very, very people centric, I believe.